Welcome back to Piers Morgan. I'm joined by my pack now, the founder of Within Our Lifetime, Nadine Kiswani, and the broadcaster and journalist Emily Austin. Okay, Emily, what did you make of that exchange I just had with Loki?
I just dislike how you ask a clear-cut question and the question never seems to be addressed on any of your interviews, quite frankly. It seems like they use the airtime as an opportunity to deny the question and just spread their own narrative, and it's pointless. The debate is pointless. It's a one-sided conversation, and there's no actual conversation. It's, here's my question. Oh, but what about this pin?
Right. I mean, Nadine, my problem with it was I've interviewed some pro-Palestinian voices in the last 2 weeks who were emphatic immediately. Let me make it clear. What happened on October the 7th was a disgusting terrorist attack, an abomination. And then they go on to talk about the plight of the Palestinian people and maybe the historical conflict and so on. And I have great respect for people that do that. I've got to say, I really struggle with anyone who just cannot have the humanity to start by saying what happened on October the 7th was appalling, an outrage. Do you feel it was?
I think Palestinians are tired of that being the starting point constantly, when right now there are 6,000 Palestinians who have been killed in Gaza, over 2,500 of them children, 33 mosques leveled, hospitals leveled. So we're tired of that being the main goal of the conversation.
It's not the main goal.
Part of it.
It's the starting point of this war. Yeah, but hang on. It's the starting point of this war. It's not the main goal of what I want the conversation to be.
The starting point was when 750,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed, were expelled from their homelands during the Nakba, which my grandparents fled Palestine because of the Nakba, because of the massacres and the rapes that they heard. So to me, that's the starting point. That's my experience.
Let's go with that for a minute. Let's start with the Nakba, because the only Nakba is the part that people forget to address. 1948, after the partition plan, the Jewish state called in the Arabs to live prosperously and peacefully in the land. But what happened the very next day, not even 24 hours later, is the alleged Nakba, where the Arab leagues declared war on the Jewish state, that we just agreed to have our two-state solution. And what did they tell their people? Leave the state, let us get the land back, let's ethnically cleanse the Jewish people, and once we defeat them in this war, you will come back to the land. So the only Nakba was a catastrophe that you guys, the Arab leagues, waged a war that you could not win, and that is why, I'm sorry, your grandparents had to leave their homes.
That's completely ahistorical. I don't represent the Arab League. I'm Palestinian, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Palestinians.
But why do you find it hard to just start, given this war, this latest war that's erupted, began with a terror attack on October the 7th, why is it hard to not just say, that was terrible? I
don't see you asking Regev if he condemned the slaughter of innocent civilians.
You can't do it, can you?
No, she can't, because she's the same woman who said every Zionist before they die should hear pop, pop before they die. So she probably agrees with the massacre. So why would she condemn them?
I think the media is part of manufacturing consent.
We're talking about you.
I'm speaking here, and I'm not interested in speaking to genocide deniers. The media is manufacturing consent for genocide against the Palestinian people, just like they did with the lie of the weapons of mass destruction that was used to justify the murder of over 1 million Iraqis. And there's been many lies that have been repeated all over the news, including on your show, where CNN had to rescind, and even you said in subsequent interviews about the 40 beheaded babies. I haven't seen a single shred of evidence. Seen a single shred of evidence about these accusations coming out.
I was actually deliberately misquoted. You raised an interesting point there about this issue of the beheaded babies from the October 7th terrorist attack. I was accused by Bassem Youssef of saying on air that 40 babies had been beheaded. I never said that. I said there were reports that 40 babies had been killed and that some had been beheaded. That appears to have been borne out by other reporting, but I haven't seen the full details of every single casualty, so I don't know for sure. I certainly never said 40 babies were beheaded, but that clip has gone around the world, and I've been bombarded with abuse based on an absolute lie.
I don't see a big difference between saying 40 babies were beheaded versus maybe, 40
some. You don't think there's between 40 beheaded. And some?
Because at the same, that's the lie that's being used to kill 6,000 Palestinians in Gaza right now.
Okay, well, let me ask Emily. All right, let me ask Emily this question. I've asked Nadine, can she say she was horrified by what happened on October?
She wasn't.
And she will not say that, which I think is very disappointing. Would you, in return, when you look at what's been happening in Gaza in the last 2 weeks, do you find that appalling, that the loss of young lives, of babies, of children, of women, innocent people who had nothing to do with the terror attacks?
Absolutely, 100%. Any death of innocent civilians should be condemned privately and publicly, and I cannot believe I have to say that. So yes, every children that is being collateral damage, every woman that's becoming collateral damage, my heart aches for them.
Why can't you do that?
I think we all agree that the loss of innocent life is sad, but I believe that the loss of innocent life wouldn't be an issue.
It's okay
if
when
Israel
it's the
didn't
Jews.
ethnically cleanse Palestine to begin with in 1948.
Well, they didn't, and that's
that is the source of this. To me, I go to the source of the issue.
But
what happened on October 7th isn't the beginning of what Palestinians
But had you asked me, okay, but Nadine, ask me.
That's not the starting point.
Why don't you ask me what do I think of that? You have a lot of preconceived views of what you think I think. I agree with you. I think the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in 1948 is the root cause of all of this.
Well, you can thank the Arab Leagues for declaring war on the two-state solution.
There are myriad people at fault in the next 70 years.
We were ethnically cleansed from our land. It's not like Jewish people were ethnically cleansed from the land of Palestine. They colonized it from other people.
But
I'm actually discussing with him. I refuse to speak to genocide deniers.
Well,
I refuse to speak to genocide deniers.
She's not a genocide denier. She's not.
Do you know the definition of a genocide?
No, I do know the definition of a genocide. Gaza currently is a concentration camp because the Palestinians.
You think Hamas wages genocide?
I believe that. Look at the numbers. Look at the Palestinians who have been killed.
Hamas's stated purpose.
We're not here to talk about any
is
specific
to eradicate
entities.
the people, the Jewish people. It's their stated purpose.
The first thing that we should be fighting
that's literally
is for
genocide.
Palestinians to be returned home to their homeland.
That is literally
talk about the specifics
Hamas's stated purpose is literally the definition of genocide. It's wiping out people based on their ethnicity.
The hostages who were released had otherwise to say.
The 2 out of 250. Let's applaud Hamas. You can't. Okay.
The hostages that Israel didn't even want to take to begin with. They didn't even want to take them back.
But they did take them. The Palestinians need to divorce
as they bomb Gaza, risking their own hostages.
I'm going to keep speaking.
They don't care about killing them.
Palestine needs to be liberated from Hamas because when your governing body is a terrorist organization, that is the root of the problem, not the alleged ethnic cleansing.
The ethnic cleansing of Palestine happened decades before Hamas was even created.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that Hamas should stay in power in Gaza?
I'm not here to talk about political organizations. No, I don't care about these questions because my people are being ethnically cleansed. Because I see the faces of 2,500 Palestinian children on social media every day, charred, mutilated, having chemical weapons against them. So this is going to be my priority on this show, just like any Palestinian around the world is speaking up for our cause.
You will also
stop using babies as human shields. Stop.
It's the most densely populated region in the world.
Yeah, but you will also know.
2.3 million Palestinians, half of them are homeless.
Let me respond to you.
This is a ridiculous argument.
My question is whether you think it is good for the Palestinian people that Hamas stay in charge, given the scale of the terror attacks they carried out, given the inevitable response that's come from Israel, with the inevitable loss of Palestinian lives, given the displacement now of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of the north of Gaza into the south, and who knows what's going to happen. The devastation to Gaza and to Gazan people has been unbelievable and yet entirely predictable once Hamas decided to carry out the terror attack on the scale they did. I simply ask you, do you think that's a good thing for Palestine?
Is it not predictable that there will continue to be resistance to oppression as long as apartheid, occupation, ethnic cleansing, genocide continues to exist? Whether Hamas exists or not is an irrelevant question. Because as long as oppression against the Palestinian people exists, we will continue
How can you end that oppression as you see it? And many would agree with you.
Why don't we address the oppression first? She called Israel an apartheid state. So I'd like to just define what apartheid is. It is segregation, like what South Africa is facing. But the alleged apartheid is because Israel set up security measures after the numerous bus bombings in 2000 and set up checkpoints, which they got very insulted by. But it's the same way that airports now require security after 9/11, reasonably so. So it is taking security precautions. Secondly, we have 3 Arabs, and if I'm not mistaken, Muslims currently sitting in the Knesset. Does that sound like apartheid to you?
Let me quote the Israeli defense minister and how they view Palestinians. He said that we are fighting against human animals, that our soldiers will not be accountable for anything. There will be no fuel, no food, no water, and Gaza will cease to exist. This is what Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister, has said. This is how they refer to Palestinians.
I think one of the big problems,
this is beyond apartheid.
I think one of the big problems leading up to this has been...
That's not apartheid.
That's beyond
let me just say what I think.
That's the language of ethnic cleansing and genocide, beyond apartheid.
Let me make the point I want to make, which is I think one of the problems leading up to this is that Benjamin Netanyahu, for political expediency to remain in power, has packed his cabinet with a bunch of right-wing headbangers whose rhetoric actually was incredibly incendiary and incredibly unhelpful. So I do think that. actually.
And you know what? Even if you're right, unfortunately, the narrative that it's about the land, I'm sorry, the Hebron massacres in 1927, 1929, that was not about Israel. It is about the murder of Jews all over the world. National Jihad Day that I had to worry about being in Manhattan last Friday was not about Israel.
You mean the day where we had a protest where thousands of New Yorkers came out? That's not a national day of jihad. You're talking about a national day of jihad.
Let me ask you both.
She's afraid
All right,
for her life. Who was killed in America? Who was killed? A 6-year-old Palestinian boy
and a
was killed in Chicago.
Week. You want to compare
was stabbed 26
That was appalling.
times.
It was appalling.
26
appalling.
times.
Yeah, but Nadine,
so you're talking about being afraid for your life. I'm constantly afraid for my life as a Palestinian
I can say to those examples you just gave, they are appalling. Appalling. But I also find it very dispiriting that you can't just take a moment to say what happened to the people in Israel on October the 7th was also appalling.
But it came out of her mouth. She wants the Zionists dead, so how is she supposed to condemn it?
It would not have happened had Israel not initiated this, and you know this from the beginning. I think we always need
Israel
to go back
did nothing
to
that warranted what happened on October the 7th. Nothing.
Israel?
Nothing. The scale of that terror attack is like saying that America brought 9/11 on itself. I remember people saying that in the streets afterwards.
I think she wants to go back in time and yell at the United Nations for
equally
dividing the
repellent
land.
to me. A terror attack is a terror attack is a terror attack. What Hamas did that day was unconscionable.
We have
anyone
no state,
with an
no
ounce of
government,
humanity
no army.
has to say that.
Anything that Palestinians do to defend themselves will always be categorized as a terrorist attack, because this is the position that the world has put us in.
Right,
I'm not responding to your questions.
I have a question. When was the last time Palestine had full sovereignty over the land? Give me a date or even a year that Palestine had their own government.
I'm not going to engage with genocide deniers. If you want to make a point, you can say that.
She wants to be a child. How are you an attorney? God. Can you ask her, when did Palestine have full sovereignty over the land?
When did Palestine have full sovereignty?
When did full sovereignty? And I see that you're taking your talking points from her.
Well, you don't want to talk to me.
It's a question.
He has to do
you don't have to answer
it. Do you want to answer me? And stop being a child? If you have a Jew in court, are you not going to represent them as an attorney?
This has nothing to do with Jewish people.
No, it does.
We actually have Jewish people protesting on the streets of New York City.
Yeah, but hang on.
In defense of Palestine.
Okay, let's not all shout over each other, but it has everything to do with Jewish people when Hamas's stated intent is to wipe Jewish people off the face of the earth.
I'm not the spokesperson of Hamas.
No, but you should be able to say that's wrong.
This conversation, that's all you're talking about.
You're defending them.
I'm here to flip the narrative and make sure that people know that this government is funding Israel to the tune of $10 million a day, $3 billion a year, and they're asking for an additional $14 billion in aid.
Okay.
The bombs that are being manufactured by U.S. companies are what's being dropped on Gaza. The world is watching a genocide happening and is not doing anything about it. So the most important thing for me to do right now is to stop this genocide. And questions about Hamas are not going to do that. It's condemning the genocide of the Palestinian people and condemning the UK and U.S. governments that we live under, that I pay taxes to, that are killing Palestinian people every day. And the UN already said that Gaza would be unlivable by 2020. The UN had already said that most of the hospitals in Gaza, at least 2/3 of the healthcare facilities, are not being able to provide. Are not able to.
I think it's
function.
wrong.
So it's not just the airstrikes and the missiles that are going to kill people. The siege and blockade has been killing people, and it will continue to people.
You should be able to say that that is all wrong, which I believe it is wrong. And you should also be able to say that what happened on October the 7th was wrong. A human being who cares equally about the lives of all human beings would be able to say that both those things are wrong.
I do care about the lives of all human beings equally, and that's why I believe that in order to preserve human life, you must end the siege on Gaza, you must end the blockade, you must end the settler colonization of Palestine.
Listen,
Free Palestine from Hamas.
It's a passionate debate, and I understand why emotions run high. I appreciate you both coming in. Thank you very much indeed. Come back. Let's continue the debate. You only get to peace in these things, I can promise you, by thrashing these things out. People that hate each other have to come together and they have to try and find places of compromise. Otherwise, you never get to peace. 70 years this has been going on. 70 years.
You need justice to get peace.
You need justice and you need compromise and you need both sides to acknowledge when bad things happen, you can say that is unacceptable. On October the 7th, if any tiny part of you says that was acceptable or there's a reason for it, I can't have that. But thank you for coming in. I appreciate it. Thank you both very much indeed.